So DocuSign 101, Jesse Morgan, take it away.
All right, thanks, Carrie. Welcome, everyone. So if you have any questions, as Carrie just mentioned, feel free to interject and ask as we go along here. So again, feel free just to interrupt. But I'm going to be taking you through the process of kind of two dual functions today. First, if you're a sender needing to send out a document, how do you send out that transaction to your recipients? And then also, we're going to take a look at from the signer/recipient point of view, what does it look like receiving a document, being asked to sign it, how does that process work? And then transitioning back over to the sender perspective to see how do we track that transaction? Who's signed it so far? What's the progress? Or if it's completed, how do we download a copy? So we're going to be going through all of that today. And then in an ongoing future session, we'll talk about DocuSign templates and how to templatize the process that we're going to go through today. So just know that today is a little bit more manual, and we're going to talk about how to streamline it and build it out in advance in the future. Okay? So right now you're looking at my browser. I'm logged into the DocuSign web application, or the web app. And here on the Home tab, we have a couple options here. We have this new button that we're going to click on here in just a minute to go ahead and create the transaction. And I'm going to go over some terminology here in just a moment. This Manage tab is where we're going to then track our different transactions, finding out where's it at in the process, or has someone sent me something to sign. We're going to take a look here navigationally as well. Again, templates we're going to skip over today. If we have time at the end, I can kind of show you a little preview of how templates work and how it can help quickly create your signature transactions. Then we'll talk about reporting, how you can run usage statistics here in DocuSign, and then some of your own personal preferences that you can go through and change, like your email notifications. Okay. The one thing I like pointing out just right up front is this little question mark in the upper right-hand corner once you log in. This little help button is contextual. So notice how I'm sitting on the Reports tab. If I go ahead and give that a click, it will take me to our support documentation on our support site. So it goes through how to set up reports, how to configure them, what options you have, etc. So just know that if you get stuck with anything that we talk about today, of course we're here to help. But if you're just looking for a quick answer, I would suggest either leveraging this little help button or even a Google search, DocuSign, plus whatever topic you're looking for. So here on the Home tab, this is where we're going to start by creating what we call an envelope. So that's a new term for everyone probably. An envelope in DocuSign is analogous to a real-life paper envelope, except for it's a digital or electronic representation of that transaction. So the envelope is a container. It contains your documents, the recipients you want interacting with those documents, and then of course, where on those documents do you want them interacting with, and what is their action going to be? Are they signing it? Are they initialing it? Are they filling out a text box with some other information that you're asking them to fill out on the form? Okay, so we're going to go through all of that, but that at a high level is what an envelope is. It's your singular transaction that you're sending out for signature. And then a template is essentially a reusable envelope. So on the template training, you're going to learn how you can create a DocuSign template, so that within a couple clicks, you're going to be able to build an envelope and send it out the door very, very quickly, again, with just a few clicks. We're not going to have to go through every single step that we're going through today, most likely. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So the first way we're going to start by creating an envelope is if we click on this New button on the home screen, notice the very first option, Send an Envelope. If you're on the Manage tab, this is where you manage your different envelope transactions that you've either received or have sent out for signature. Notice the folders here on the left. But this New button here as well is identical. So the first option, Send an Envelope. Okay, so I'm going to give that a click. And now I'm creating an envelope for signature. And we have this broken down into some very intuitive processy steps. So we have to upload our documents. We add our recipients. We'll maybe put some instructions or a special subject line to capture our recipient's attention in their email inbox. And then on the next page is where we're going to drag and drop some of those fields like signatures, text boxes, drop-down menus, etc., onto the form. And that'll be where we specify what our recipients are doing on the document. Okay, so let's go through this just step by step together. First step is I'm going to go ahead and click Upload. And I'll go ahead and pick a couple documents here. Now, you can upload as many documents as you need. The only hard limit is 25 megabytes per document. So if you think about that, you could upload 10 documents, each 24.9 megabytes each. You're not going to have an issue there. So just make sure each document, though, is under 25 megs. But it can be any major document type. It could be a Word document, text, image, PDF. The only thing that we don't accept are like code-based files that could be malicious in nature, like JavaScript or executable files, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my pretty generic sample here that I like to demonstrate, which is a mutual non-disclosure agreement that requires 2 signatures so we can track the process from signer to signer together. Now notice how I still have my upload button available because like I said, you can keep uploading as many documents as you need in this envelope transaction that are needed. Okay, and we're going to talk about that template button on a later session together. So the first step in our recipients is we need to provide a name and email for at least one person because when we create an envelope, we have to send it to someone, otherwise there's no intent or no point in creating an envelope. And what's going to happen is when we send out this envelope, what we're doing is we're sending an email notification to the email address of the recipient that we specify. And you'll see that in a moment, but when you click on the link in the email, that's what opens the recipient's browser so that they can sign the document. Okay, so we need to provide a name and email first. So let me go ahead and fill in someone here. Okay. So I have my recipient, Derek. Now if I wanted to add a second recipient, I go ahead and click Add Recipient. And let me go ahead and add some sort of approver here. I'll make it Barbara. Okay. Now the term recipient is really vague. It doesn't define what your action is when you receive the envelope. Are you a signer, being asked to either sign the document or fill out some text box? Or are you a carbon copy recipient where you have no action at all? We're just simply providing you a copy to view if needed. Or maybe your role requires you're carbon copied and you save the copy elsewhere, back in your database somewhere. Right? So the term recipient is very vague. So we have other recipient terminology that we use to indicate what is their action going to be. So the different recipient role types we have in this drop-down menu, you notice how it's defaulted to needs to sign. What that means is as long as you have a recipient that needs to interact with one of the DocuSign fields on the form, you're going to leave them as a signer. Now this causes a lot of confusion for newcomers to DocuSign because you might say, well, this recipient just needs to fill out a text box. We're not asking them to sign the form. What option do we choose? You're going to leave them as needs to sign. So put an asterisk next to that in your note. If they have to interact with a DocuSign field, leave them as needs to sign. But we have all these other recipient role types. In-person signer means that you're asking someone to host an in-person signing ceremony or signing session. So you might have an employee that has their own company-issued laptop, and the signer might be standing face-to-face with your employee. And instead of having your recipient open their email anywhere in the world and sign the document, maybe you want to control that signing experience. So maybe face-to-face, you validate their identification or some other paperwork. And if they are who they say they are, pull up the document on your company device, hand it over to the signer that's face-to-face with you, and have them sign on your laptop. Okay, so that would be an example of like a hosted signing ceremony. Then we have receives a copy, which a carbon copy shouldn't be something new for anybody that's used to carbon copying anyone on an email, same functionality. And these other recipient role types we're not going to get into today, but these are intermediary role types where if you need to pause the envelope from progressing from one person to the next, it gives you a chance to review the progress being made on the document. How has it been filled out thus far? And then who is the most appropriate person does it need to go to next? And did I hear a question?
No, but I actually do have one.
Okay, yeah, please.
Does the field is it smart text? Like, does it populate automatically, or do we have to enter everybody in individually? Like, I noticed when you were typing, names came up. Is there a database that's already going to be built into this, or is it up to us to build our own databases for our office?
So there are no databases. Basically what you're looking at here is our address book. Our address book is really like a contact history. It doesn't sync with any other database or address book that you might have externally. If you wanted that type of behavior, it can be done, but that gets into a more technical integration where you're not leveraging our web application. You're leveraging your own code integration that you've built using DocuSign APIs. So
basically, once
what
I get somebody in the first time, they'll be there for me to use again.
Correct, they should. Yep. Now you can also, when we get time at the end, I'll show you how you can go into your personal preferences and how you can, as an individual user, can populate names and emails into your address book. So if you know that you are going to be sending to frequent contacts, and maybe you want to elect to then share that name and email with your other peers that are using DocuSign, I can show you how to do that as well. So it's kind of a dual functionality. It either acts as a contact history, or you can pre-populate names in advance one at a time. But unfortunately, we don't have any type of main syncing with an external directory in this regard. Okay, good question. So then underneath this tab right here, we can customize some other settings for this recipient that I've selected. So for Derek, I'll click on Customize. And one thing that I can do here is I could add a private message that only he could see, and my other recipient would not be able to see, hence the name Private Message for this recipient here. So if I wanted to provide some instructions, or if I'm asking this individual to authenticate using a special secret code, I can provide a little password hint here in the private message. And then further down below is where we're going to specify instructions and a message that all recipients can see. But up here is where we can specify private notes that only certain recipients can see. So one thing we can do here under Customize is I can add an access code. So for example, if I type in a super secret access code like this here, essentially when Derek clicks on the link in the email, it's going to ask him to enter his unique access code. And the intent here is that the sender would have to verbally communicate this to the recipient, because we won't send this access code to them. It would kind of defeat the purpose sending the access code in the same email that the link is being sent in. So what some customers do is they'll put a little hint here. You should never put what the access code is here in the private message, but what I would do is just put a little hint like your access code is the last 4 of your SSN or date of birth or whatever it might be. Now it's a guessable secret where they can guess what their own access code is. And I'm going to leave this applied so you can see how that works. Now right now, for these two recipients, nothing is indicating who's signing first or second. And this is what we actually call parallel routing. If we wanted to have more of a sequenced routing order where we have Derek sign first, then Barbara, I'd have to click on this box to set up a signing sequence. But with this unchecked, what this means is that Derek and Barbara would get the envelope simultaneously. Now on the next page, before we send this out, we're going to specify with the field placement which person is interacting with which portions of the document. So they're not going to be signing on top of each other, but they will be signing their own respective portions simultaneously. And you can always check your workflow by clicking on the little signing order diagram link over here. It'll give you a nice visual representation of you're sending it, and right here in routing order number 1, we have 2 recipients receiving it side by side simultaneously, but only after they're both done signing will it then be marked as completed. And if I go ahead and click this box, we can see some numbers appear to the left. So if I change my mind and say, you know what, I actually want Barbara to sign first, let's drag her up to position number 1, and let's change Derek back to number 2. And then click on our signing order, and now you can see the new sequence. So the first step is Barbara's going to receive it. Then after she signs, will it then go to Derek? Then Derek signs, and then it'll be marked as completed. Okay. Now you can also mix and match sequential and parallel signing. So if I did have a third recipient here, let's just pick my name for simplicity's sake. and I need to sign in parallel to Barbara. And let's just say Derek is the overriding approver for the whole transaction, but me and Barbara need to sign it simultaneously. If I now click on the signing order, we can see how it's been updated. So it's going to come to me and Barbara simultaneously, and after we're both done, will it then be routed to Derek. So again, we're going to get into all the little nuances and subtleties with the routing orders, different ways you can handle advanced workflows on our more advanced sessions together. This is just really giving you kind of a preview into some of the functionality that's available. Okay, so now the next step is we're going to add a message. So you need to have a unique subject line because the name, or rather the subject line you use becomes the name of your envelope. And if you think about it, when you get a bunch of emails and all the titles are the same, the subject lines are the same rather, it gets really confusing to track which email you've responded to, especially when some email clients group emails together that have the same title. Same thing here in DocuSign. Make sure that your subject lines are unique because when you send an envelope, you as the sender also get email updates giving you updates on the progress of that transaction. So if all your subject lines are the same, it's going to make it really difficult to track your different envelopes. So make sure that you put in something unique. And here's our message that all recipients will see. Now what you can also do is we have customized language for each recipient. So if I wanted to, I could have some of the verbiage automatically translated in DocuSign into a different language. We can't translate the document, your subject line, or your private message, or the body message. But what we can translate is a lot of the general instructions that we provide to your recipient, or the out-of-the-box terminology in the email notifications, what the buttons say to click on, etc. So you're going to see that experience here in a moment. But this is nice because if I know that my first recipient, Barbara, maybe her native language is in Spanish. So I can come down here, click Spanish, and then for my other recipient, I'll go ahead and leave it English if I know that that's that person's primary language. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And then lastly on this screen, we configure some advanced options, like what do we want to allow some recipients to be able to do or not do. And then we can also specify reminders and expiration settings. This is really nice because today in the manual paper world, you probably have to follow up with your individuals manually, finding out where is it at in the signature, why haven't you signed yet, here's my annoying reminder to you again. We can take care of that for you. So if we click on this box to send automatic reminders, in addition to the first notification that we send today, that's going to go out the door here in a moment, this is saying how many days do we want to wait from the time the envelope is created to reminding the recipient again if they haven't signed right away. So maybe if it's not too time sensitive, maybe I'll wait 2, 3, 4 days for the first reminder. Really it kind of varies on your use case. And then here's the reoccurring cadence. So if they haven't signed today plus 2 days from now after that first reminder, this is where I set that annoying reminder if you want to pester them a little bit. So maybe I'll say bug them every 1 day. And then once they sign, those reminders stop. There's no point in reminding them if they've already completed their action. And if they still haven't signed, we don't want contracts sitting out there indefinitely. So just like in the real world, paper world, you probably have contracts that expire or you expect them back at a certain point. And if you get them back beyond a certain date, they're null and void. You have to start over. You probably have to redraw terms and conditions, etc. Same thing. So make sure that you set an expiration date so that you don't have a document sitting out there where basically you'd be allowing to accept a signature almost 3 years from now. So something more realistic is, I don't know, maybe 30, 60, 90 days. Again, whatever the use case calls for. And then I can warn the recipient in advance. So maybe just to make sure that it doesn't expire out of the blue, I'll give them a 10-day lead warning so it kind of adds some urgency to try and nudge them along to hurry up. Okay. And then I'll click Save. And then the very next step is we click on the Next button. But before I do that, let me pause. Are there any questions from anything else that I've covered on this page so far?
No.
No? Okay, good. All right, so again, feel free to bring up any questions. We can always come back to this page here in just a minute. Okay, so this is what we call our tagging screen. And this is the step 2 out of 2 to creating an envelope. So the concept here is we pick the recipient that we want to place fields for, and then we drag those fields over onto the document and drop them. Okay, so very easy. Signature, maybe we want a date, we want a name printed, so on and so forth. You can see we have a lot of various fields that you can leverage to build out any form that you could possibly imagine. Formulas, you can request attachments to allow your signers to upload documentation or images you might want them to. You can add contextual notes, and we're going to get into all these different fields on the template training. It lends itself during that call to talk about all of the little intricacies of these fields, what they can do, how to configure them. But for right now in DocuSign 101, for the purposes of dragging and dropping fields, it's always great to start with some of these more basic fields like signatures, initials, dates, etc. Okay. So how we place fields is color-coded. And we can see there's a little yellow dot next to my recipient, Barbara, and all these fields are yellow, same color. And if I click on my recipient, Derek, we can see the fields turn blue. There's one exception, but that's a special case. So if we go ahead and scroll on down, and I know my party 1 on this document needs to sign is Barbara, I'll click on her name up here, and then I'll drag over the yellow fields for her to interact with. Okay, pretty easy. And then I'll click on that drop-down menu. Let's place the fields for party 2, Derek. And that's what I was saying earlier when I was saying that the recipients aren't going to be signing on top of each other's fields unless I were to place it like that, right? But because I'm specifying which fields are assigned to whom, when they open the document, when they click on the link in their email, they're only interacting with the fields that we are assigning to them specifically. So when Derek goes to sign, he's only going to see his fields here, and he'll already see the first signer's signature since they come first. But when signer 1 goes in, they're not going to see Derek's fields. Okay. And we're going to talk about all the different properties over here to the right. You notice any field that I click on or click off of, that property menu either goes away or returns, because that would be fine-tuning some of the field settings, such as changing the font, the size, color, if you want to apply special labels. So if you need to export the data for any reason or set up formulas and conditional logic. Again, we're going to get into all those advanced features on the template training and other sessions beyond that. But once I get my fields placed, now all I need to do is go ahead and click Send. Great. So now my envelope has been created and it's sent. So most of that time that I just went through was mainly with explanation, but you can see how really relatively easy it is. You add your document, your recipients, drag and drop fields, and click Send. Very easy. All those other customizations would really be dependent upon how much you want to customize and what your various use case requirements are. But now we can see I'm on my Manage tab. And the way I like to describe the Manage tab is it's kind of like an email inbox, or an email client rather. Because as you can see under our sent items, just like if you were to send emails, that's where you'd find emails that you've sent. Same thing here in DocuSign. These are all the envelopes that I've sent recently. If I come to my inbox, here's an envelope that was sent to me by HR to review and sign. Okay. So with this envelope right here, we can see there's a little clock next to it. We have a status waiting for others, and we can see others that are completed or voided and when it was sent. But if we go ahead and click on the subject line, this will give us a nice user interface view, giving us a big picture of what's going on with this envelope transaction. So we're going to return back to the screen here in a moment, but what I'd like to do now is I'm going to check my email. We're going to pretend to be a signer getting that email notification, and what does this first signing process look like? Okay. Let me go ahead and refresh here. So it'll come across as sender name via DocuSign, and here's our subject line to grab our attention, of course. The branding experience can have your logo and colors. Yes, go ahead. Did I hear a question? No? Okay. So we can have your VSU logos and colors in here if you'd like. And also, I'll show you at the end of the call where you can upload your own little picture avatar because it does appear in the emails by default. But when they're ready, they go ahead and click on Review Document, and then this is what's going to open their browser into the that signing ceremony that I was mentioning. And the first step that a signer has to do is they have to agree to do business with you electronically. And they do so by consenting to this legal disclosure that your team will be reviewing. But basically, this is your signer's way of giving consent that their electronic signature holds as much weight and value as their paper-based wet signature would. Okay, so I'll consent, continue. And then I'll go ahead and either click Start or I can scroll down to the fields, but we can see how I can just scroll through. I can read the document. I can zoom in or out. I can print it in its current state. And as I was mentioning before, we can't see Signer 2's fields yet, but I can see the fields that have been assigned to me to sign. And again, we're pretending to be this individual right here. If I try and click Finish prematurely, it won't let me because I have a required field, this one right here, a signature, that I haven't completed yet. So it won't let them finish until they complete all fields, and that's really good for you because you're going to be able to enforce to get all the data you want consistently moving forward from document to document. You're not going to have one transaction missing it and the other transaction containing what you're looking for. Okay, and we're going to talk about all those best practices as we go on from session to session. Before I complete this action though, let me show you the other actions that a recipient can take. If they click Finish later, this will allow them to save their current progress. If they've filled out a lot of fields, they can come back when they're ready. All their progress is saved and they can finish again whenever they like. If they click Decline to Sign, this is them trying to void the transaction, meaning they don't want to participate. So just like you'd give someone a real out in real life with a paper document, same thing in DocuSign. For a lot of different compliances, you do want to give them the option to back out, but we can always talk about ways of removing this if it's a business requirement. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and finish signing by clicking on my signature tab here, and then I can either pick a signature style from one of our signature fonts, or I can draw my signature, which typically mobile users like, or I can even allow my signers to upload a signature image. Say if like an executive assistant was signing on behalf of some sort of executive or VP, they could upload a rubber stamp image. I'm going to go ahead and pick a style and adopt and sign. So now my signing is completed, but I'm not fully complete until I click Finish. Now I can either wait until the document is completed because we're going to notify everyone when the document is complete. You don't have to worry about that. Your signers and the sender will all be notified when it's all said and done. But right here, this pop-up is asking, do I want to create a free account so I can log in later and access the same document? Or I can download or print a copy in its current state with just one signature, not two. I'm going to click No Thanks for now. Okay, so now I'm done. By the way, this landing page can be changed to redirect your users back to the VSU page of your choice. Ideally, your own landing page with your own successful status message. Or you can leave it our default. Okay, so now the next recipient automatically gets notified with their email notification. In this case, it's my recipient, Derek. And remember for Derek, we added that little private message, hey, here's your access code hint. Now before we sign as him, let's actually just switch gears a little bit. Let me show you how the envelope has now progressed from the sender standpoint. So let me refresh my browser here. And we can still see the overall status. We're still waiting for others. It's still an incomplete envelope, or in progress rather. But we can see we at least have one signature that's completed. There's a little green check mark. It says signed. There's a date and timestamp. But it also shows you who we are currently waiting on. And do I hear any questions? Okay. All right. So if the recipient in this case Derek. I'm going to go ahead and sign so we can see what the completed copy looks like. But if this person said, hey, I didn't get that email notification, can you send it to me again? Of course, validate the email, make sure it's correct, but I can always click resend. And what this is going to do is it's not creating a brand new envelope, but what it is doing is it's just resending the notification to the current recipient that you're waiting on. Okay, so when I clicked resend, we did not notify Barbara because she's already signed the document. But now here's another scenario. I notice that the email address for this person is wrong. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete this email. And here, from a sender view, you can do what's called a correction. So if I click on correct, as long as the envelope hasn't been completed or voided, I can perform some corrections. We can see the document is locked into place, and my first recipient is grayed out because this person has already signed this document. So their action is said and done. That's why I can't change them. But because we're still waiting on this person, they haven't taken their action yet, I can modify them in this correction process. So I can say, oops, that should be an I, not an E. And then finally, I can click on next and finalize my correction by clicking correct. Now again, in this process, we're not asking the first signer to go back and sign the document again. If we come back over here on our sent items, click back on it, it's now updated to the new email address with the correct spelling. And if I wanted to, from an auditing standpoint, I can come over here and view the history, and I could see that that change was made. I could see who sent it, when it was sent, when the first person opened it, viewed it, and signed it. But then down here, I could see that as the sender, I resent the invite to this email. I then performed a correction, at which point I corrected it from this email to this email address. And then it was resent to them. So just keep in mind that a running audit trail is capturing every step along the way so you can prove exactly what happened with that transaction. And lastly, I could also void the transaction if I wanted to nullify it and put it in a voided state where you'd have to start over from scratch, all from signer 1 again. But you do have that option in case something irrevocably goes wrong and you need to just void it in its entirety. Okay, so without too much more jabbering here, let me go ahead and sign as my recipient, Derek. So when I click on this link, because I had that access code enforced as the authentication method, anytime you send a document that has personally identifiable information on it, even if it's just a street address, that's considered PII level data. And you really need to think about how to secure the envelope transactions and your data. Because remember, we're just sending an email notification. So whoever clicks on that email link is going to have access to see the document and the data if you don't protect it behind some sort of authentication option like I showed you. So you want to concern yourself with what level of authentication should I use? Should it be used on this use case? And if so, don't forget it because, again, you want to make sure that you're not going to be a participant in any type of data breach that could happen. Right? So if I enter in an access code incorrectly here, click validate, it won't let me in. I have a total of 3 tries before it locks me out and before the sender has to unlock it again for me. Okay, so I'll go ahead and validate. Click agree, continue. And the signing process for this recipient is going to be the same, but we can see the data applied from the first recipient already. Okay, so now our envelope is successfully completed. And delete that. So now a completed email notification goes out to all parties. And because I'm using the same email address here in Gmail, that's why I have all the emails coming to me. But we can see here as the sender, myself, Jesse, I received a completed notification. Go on down further. This next email that went to Derek, they also got one. And also you can guess my other recipient, Barbara, she also got a completed notification. So everyone is given a link, and when they click on it, they're able to view that final copy that's fully executed. And if I go ahead and scroll on down, I can view both signatures. And from here, as a signer, or recipient rather, I can click this download arrow, and I could download the PDFs. The other thing I like to just show you is the certificate of completion. So as a best practice, anytime an envelope is completed and you want to save a copy of the final document back to your system, always also download the certificate of completion. And I'll show you a different way to get to it, but I just want to show you what it is first. But if I come up here to Actions and View Certificate, this is the official audit trail of how the signatures were captured and the various tokens of data that we captured along the way. So you'll notice here at the top of the document, let me zoom in a little bit, we have an envelope ID that's stamped at the top of the screen, or at the top of the page rather. This unique ID is unique to this transaction only. And if I look on the certificate, we have that same envelope ID. So there's an instant correlation between the two. I can see who the sender was, how many pages were involved, how many signatures I requested, and so forth. And if I scroll on down, this is where a lot of the signer events come into play that you would want to prove if someone ever disputed the legitimacy of their signature, saying, hey, I never signed that, etc. So we can see here the first recipient, Barbara. Here's a picture of her signature image that she adopted. We can see that we sent the link via email. So first question is, well, how did someone sign if they didn't have access to your email? Right? We can see the IP address in case we need to map it to a general vicinity or location. And we can see also when it was sent to them, when they clicked on the link to view the document, and also when they finally completed all the fields and clicked the Finish button. For this recipient here, Derek, we can see there was an additional level of access code for the security level. So you can ask, okay, who had access to your email? And furthermore, who had access to that secret access code that only you should know? And again, you can layer on other additional layers of authentication if needed. And then lastly, if we come on down here, we can also see a copy of the legal disclosure that was accepted before the signers even signed the document. So this is as the disclosure read when they accepted it for this particular transaction. So legal teams love that. So again, this is your signature proof, and it's highly recommended, again, that when you download your final copies of the signed document, also download and store a copy of the certificate next to every DocuSign transaction. Again, for the purposes of having it on hand, just in case anyone ever challenges their signature, you have the information of how those signatures were collected and by whom. Now, looking at it here from this sender standpoint, if we go ahead and refresh the screen again, you'll see that now the overall envelope status is completed. Green check marks all the way. And over here on the far right, if I click on this little download arrow, this allows me to download the completed document and the certificate all in one file. And it downloads as a zip file, so that way you're guaranteed to get both and not accidentally forget it. Okay. Now the other option that I want to show you is, what if I needed to create a copy of this transaction? If I click Create Copy, this is essentially our cloning functionality, where we can clone the envelope as it was from the very, very beginning, before it was even signed by the first individual. So you can see here, if I view the document and go down here to page 3, the signatures are blank. And both my signers are intact with how I had them created originally. And when I go to Next, all of these fields are still placed in advance for me. So the Create a Copy is great when you have to void a transaction, make some adjustments, and send it out for signature again. Because once you void it, you can't send out the same envelope. You have to create a new one. So instead of creating it from scratch, you can void it, clone it, make whatever changes you need, and then send out that brand new envelope as originally intended. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and discard here. Now, just to walk you through some other navigational items, you can also create custom folders and then organize your envelopes into those folders. And if you remember my description at the very beginning, again, the inbox is only going to be envelopes that have been sent to you from other parties, or that you might have sent to yourself if maybe you're the sender and you also happen to have to sign some portion of the document. Or anything in your sent items are what you've sent out and you're waiting on for signature from others. And you also have a search box up here, so I can run a search. I can search for particular envelope statuses. Now, when I run a search, just FYI, you can only search off of keywords in the subject line or any details such as the recipient name or email address. But if you want to try and search for any document level data, you won't be able to find that. We can talk about other ways of adding that information to your envelopes and searching for it later. But that would be a little bit different method, and that's what this setting is with envelope custom fields. Now under reports, we have 12 out-of-the-box reports we give you. If you're a standard user on the account like a sender, you can only run reports for your own activity, but admins can run reports for the entire account. So if you do need to run a report, say if I were a sender and I were sending a large volume of envelopes on a weekly basis, I may just want to be notified or run a report, say at the end or beginning of each week, to see what envelope transactions am I still waiting for to get signed. Of course, I can come over here to my Manage tab, and over on the left I can click Waiting for Others, and I could see, oh, I only have one that I'm waiting for one other person to sign. Or which ones are expiring soon, and it automatically filters those out. So you can leverage these filters here without a report. But if I did have a large number of envelopes where it was just still unmanageable to manage those in my Manage tab, what I could do is come over here, for example, click on Envelope, and let's just say I wanted to run an envelope report to just notify me of certain envelope statuses. So I can click on View, and then I can modify my filters here for my report. So what date range, what type of filtering do I need to do, a particular status, recipient details, subject line, etc. And also edit columns. So what data do I want output in the report? So maybe I want to look at, let's see here, I don't know, the expiration date, or if they declined it, what were the reasons for declining, whatever the filters are. And then when I'm ready, I can either click Run Report, or even better, I can click Save As to save a custom report so I don't have to redo my filters later. Click Save, and then I can click Run Report and get the results that I'm looking for. Now, once I've run my report, what I can do over here on the right-hand side is, of course, I can delete my custom report. I can email the results immediately as an email attachment. Basically, we send an email with a link that they can click on, and we can also attach a zip file with the CSV file included. I can send it to others or just myself, or vice versa. Now, for the scheduling, same concept is I can choose to email it to myself or others, but I can choose the cadence, and this would be a reoccurring scheduled report. So I can say run this on a weekly basis, every Friday or Monday, change your date range here, and then go ahead and click Done. And now it's scheduled. And if we come back over here to the reports, we now see under the custom reports, I have my one, and I could see that it's scheduled, and I can even deactivate it, or I can edit the cadence. Okay. Now lastly, in the far upper right-hand corner, if we click on our picture avatar and then click My Preferences, this allows us to adjust our own personal preferences for our user that we're logged in as currently. This is not modifying features or settings for other users on the account, so don't be worried about that. But this is for your own personal login, such as you saw when I sent the envelope, my little puppy's picture appeared here in the email notification. So that's the profile picture I had uploaded. And then I can, of course, make sure that I have an appropriate and valid company name, job title, address, and phone number. These details can be presented to your recipient, so make sure that it is valid and appropriate. You can also adopt your signatures in advance. So if you know as an employee you're going to be signing documents rather frequently with your own signature, go ahead and adopt a signature here in your user profile. That way, when you go to sign a document, you don't have to click and re-adopt a new signature every time. You can leverage an existing one that you've already adopted here in your preferences. Now, over on the left, the other thing I want to point out is the question that you asked earlier for contacts. So this was a running contact history of all the recipients that I've ever sent to. But over here in the upper right, I can click Add Contact in advance and provide the full name, email, and phone number if I need to. But if I choose this option right here, this toggle, making it a shared contact means that if my colleague, Carrie, was on the same account as me, and she went to send an envelope, let's just say I named this person Bob Smith, and she starts typing in BO, she's going to see this name and email as a potential result that she could send to, even though historically she's never sent to this person before. So it can be a contact history, or you can pre-populate some names and emails in advance one at a time like this. And over here on the left under notifications, I'm just pointing out some of the more important settings here. As a sender, when you start sending out envelopes, you're going to receive notifications to you as a sender giving you updates on those envelopes that you've sent. And that's underneath this heading, sending notifications, meaning these are notifications you get if you're the sender. Now what I recommend is leave all of these on by default because you don't know what you don't know. So it's always best to leave them enabled until you decide what notifications are really important to me, what helps me out in my day-to-day, or which ones are cluttering my inbox that really have no use for me. Right, so leave them all on initially, but over time you might learn which ones you might want to disable, so you can always come in here and adjust these. The recipient notifications, just to be clear, these are not notifications that you can allow or disallow for the individuals you're sending to. These recipient notifications are if you are addressed as a recipient for an envelope. So one of your peers sends you a document to sign. These would be the notifications you would be subject to as a recipient. But these are not disabling notifications for the recipients that you send to. Okay. All right. So we have some time for some questions. So that's DocuSign 101. Let's open it up to the room and see what questions are out there. Anyone?
Already at the moment. It's like cricket over here.
Jesse, I have one question.
Sure.
What are options for actually editing documents between individuals and sending them back and forth instead of just applying signatures? And I'm thinking for contract negotiation purposes.
Mm-hmm. So in DocuSign, you're always going to be applying text as images on top of your document. DocuSign was never designed to do any type of inline redlining edits. So the concept is your document that you upload into an envelope or template is writing along as an underlying document layer. And you're simply using DocuSign fields to overlay signatures, dates, or other text that you might need on top of your document. So again, it wasn't really designed for that redlining back and forth, let's negotiate the underlying document. That should be done ahead of time outside of DocuSign. But once the document is fundamentally ready, either for signatures or other data collection, then by all means upload that into an envelope, apply your fields, and then send it out. But what I think, so one thing I didn't show, go to my sent items here. Let's create a copy. Go to the tagging screen. So on the template call, I mentioned that we're going to go through all of these other types of fields. But what if I need to, actually let me just add another document here just for demonstration purposes. Let's do a training form that I have here. So we have a form like this where, again, the underlying document is ready for data collection. So I could leverage text fields, say like for a school ID drag over a text field. So they're not going to be necessarily scribbling their signature, but they would still be electronically signing the document by applying data, because I'd be asking this recipient here, Barbara, to type into this text field and provide this information that I'm looking for. So you could use DocuSign to collect text and other information that you might need on the form, but as far as the underlying document negotiation, that sort of redlining ideally should be done before it enters DocuSign.
Okay, that's what I thought, I just wanted to make sure.
As a follow-up to that, when you send out an envelope, is there ever an option for the recipient to upload a document?
There is, yeah. And if we go ahead and scroll on down over here, we do have an attachment field. And if I drag and drop this, so to us, it just looks like a little yellow box with a paperclip in it. But that's just, the little paperclip is our way of just indicating that it's an attachment. But when the signer goes to interact with this form, this is an interactive button. So when they click on it, it'll open a little dialog box where they can browse their computer and they can upload anything of their choice. Again, within reason. It has to be an image or a document type. But they could upload whatever it is you're looking for. The only thing is we can't validate what's been uploaded, but we can at least enforce to make sure that something is uploaded. But yeah, I would leverage this attachment field. Again, we'll talk about these more in depth, but the caveat to this one is it does leave like a little black paperclip icon stamped to your document. So we wouldn't want to have it over something like this where it can overlap some text. So make sure it's over some blank white space.
And how many documents can you, not an attachment, but how many documents can you put in an envelope?
As many as you'd like. Yeah, the only limit is a hard file size limit of 25 megabytes per document. So if you wanted 20 documents in there, each 24.9 megabytes, not a problem.
Okay. And when you're signing, are you signing a document or an envelope, or both?
Both. Technically, you're electronically signing the transaction with all the different tokens that we looked at, like the dates, timestamps, IP addresses. But that's just providing evidence of how that signature was collected. But you're also technically signing the document, because at the end of the day, the signature that you adopt is going to be stamped on that document. And then when you download the final PDF, it is a sealed PDF. So all those electronic signature seals are unbroken, and you can prove that it was electronically signed.
As the envelope moves between recipients or amongst the recipients, these text fields, you can have them open to any of those recipients to add information?
You could. Depending upon the scenario, there are some best practices where sometimes we might say, hey, that's not a good idea. Or there are some instances where we could say, yeah, that could work. But we do have a feature over here. So if I click on this text box, and it's called collaboration, I could enable all my recipients in the workflow to collaborate. So even though this field is fundamentally assigned to this person, Barbara, to fill out, what that also means is because I have this checked, my next recipient, Derek, when it's his turn, even though this field wasn't principally assigned to him, he could still click into it and modify the ID that Barbara typed into this text box. So you could allow that functionality, but again, it comes down to requirements, who should be interacting with the data, and what are the implications of that.
Well, in our examples, we have a lot of inter-office forms that we're not necessarily seeking legal signatures for, but simply validated, yeah, things like that.
Well, I'm thinking of my travel. I see a lot of these for accounts payable, payroll, HR, some of the stuff that procurement's is getting ready to roll out, but I don't see a replacement of our workflow, so like process plan, which is positive, we could use it to replace workloads like that, which I don't see this being doable, all right? I think data collection forms, that's the only thing I can.
Which is what?
Majority of it.
Which is what, P-card pre-approval request is.
But I can send it back.
Right.
And this means I would have to do a form for pre-approval instead of sending them to a portal. Right, so I have to manually put it in every time, and each user would have to manually put it in, right?
That may be part of the.
Yeah, I'm
And
not
we're
pretty
gonna have
sure what you've seen here as to what we can do with it. This is what interface do you call this again?
This is our web application, or our web app. We can get into much more technical integration discussions, like whether it's with, I've had some universities integrate DocuSign with Salesforce, others with other information systems that you have using our APIs or other connectors. So where the document comes from and how the envelope is created can be done in a variety of ways. So yeah, one thing that, I know we're running short on time, one thing that I will throw out there is that throughout this project, we have the capability of offering working sessions, and we actually prefer that, where you can come to the table with your various use cases, your questions, your business requirements, and then from a professional services standpoint, we go through best practices, ideas how you could implement DocuSign for those use cases and give you a variety of options. And that way we can help guide you down the path, so that way you're setting up your use case for success in DocuSign. So the more details you can find out about, kind of the questions you're asking internally there for your business requirements, we can definitely help you come up with some sort of solution in DocuSign.
Now you went through, I guess, a lot of the forms we have would be posted on the website, I think, sort of what I just heard. Is that in a future session?
Yes, on the next session in templates, we're going to be talking about what's called Power Forms, and that's a self-service envelopes where you can click on a link, sign the document, and then have someone notified.
Yeah, I think that's probably the majority of what we'll be doing.
Just need a signature part, yay for contracting, for all of our online interactive forms. We're trying to get everything online right now.
And Pepper, I'm sending you availability for the template creation power form session. And with that one, then you probably, if you have a couple of forms that you want to send to us, we can use those for the template creation session.
Okay.
And again, it's not specifically designed to create.
My inbox just got really full.
What was that?
I've got a ton of volunteers. My inbox just got really full.
Well, and I wanted to just share, this isn't specifically designed to complete the template in its entirety, but it show you how to break down a use case, what you need to consider, all of the various options, and then we would schedule the working sessions that Jesse was talking about.
Okay.
Okay, then. Thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.